So, Isaac, welcome to Wales as I'm clicking record on my computer. Um, so, yeah, you're joining me on a sunny day. What's the weather like with you?
Sunny and beautiful outside. So
Yeah, good.
87 degrees, which in Celsius is, I think, something like 245.
Give or take, give or take. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so strange how yeah, the temperature thing. Because water boils at 100. So, like, what is the reason behind, I know this isn't talking about the film, but what was the reason behind Fahrenheit?
Oh, we just had to make it better, you know? I mean, 22 degrees just doesn't seem warm enough, so we got to heat it up a little bit, right?
Oh,
So,
that's true. When I
uh,
was a kid, we always used to use Fahrenheit. When it was a hot day, you'd say it was 100 degrees. But like as time changed, then we moved over. But all right then. So let's have a chat about. You asked me to watch. Well, you gave me a list of films, and one of them was Midnight in Paris. So it was a film that I've never seen before. Obviously, it's something that's come across my radar, but you know, there's always 100 million films that you've never seen, and that was one of them. So a few nights ago, I sat and I watched it, and I didn't watch anything beforehand, so I didn't have any spoilers. I didn't have a clue what the film was about. I had a rough idea it was a kind of time travel thing, but the actual premise of the story I didn't know. Yeah, so I guess an interesting thing would be you asking me something about it first. So is there anything that you can think for somebody who's watched it once and never seen it before?
yeah. I mean, it's not one of the deepest movies ever, but I would rank it up there as one of my favorites just because it resonates with me personally, right? I mean, I've always thought I was born in the wrong era. I've always thought I've been born in the wrong time. I long to go back to days where, we can do away with the technology, the simplicity of it, where really people just sat down with a piece of paper, scribbled their ideas away, and really just, found a sense of interest in the general area, right? I don't know if it's just my own personality, but it doesn't matter where I live. Like I just get bored with it, and I'm just like I need the new, and the new to me, especially with that movie, is something that you can't ever grasp, right? It's something that you could never go back to 1922 Paris and actually live in those times, and so. I did a lot of research, also reading about those times. I read uh, Ernest Hemingway's novel on the subject, and of his time there, and especially his relationship with the Hemingways. I guess, what did you really take? What was your first impression of why I would have recommended that movie to you? Like, what did you grab from it that you thought, hey, this was a interesting movie at least?
The thing that struck me from where as a recommendation from you was that I think we both have conversations about the idea of being in a different time and a place, and a kind of rejection of modernity. And we first met not that well 25 years ago now, and the world was a very different place then. So yeah, I think our age has the, I don't know, the luck, I would say, of living in a world before technology. And as technology started to come in, really, with the internet and mobile phones and things, and the world that we live in now. So we've got, I wouldn't say rose tinted glasses, but we actually physically remember those times. So,
Yeah.
we remember the time when, if you wanted to meet your friend somewhere in the city, you'd have to arrange in school on Friday at 3 o'clock what time you were going to
Yeah.
meet them and where, because
Yeah.
there was no, you could ring their house if they had a house phone, but not. I know in the UK, I didn't have a house phone till I was about 15. So, we're a little bit of a leap and a step behind the US, but yeah,
Yeah, so
so
you had to run down to the telephone booth and say like, "Hey, call me
yeah.
at 3:30 at the telephone booth," right?
And there might be
Exactly. I was
somebody
talking.
else standing in the booth
Yeah.
at the time,
Yeah, get the hell out, man. I got my call. Well, and my daughter is now going to be starting a long distance relationship with her boyfriend, and I was talking to my wife about that. I was like, it's a whole different story today. Like here, we
Yeah.
have each other's video, we can hear each other, we can see our backgrounds, we can really like, relate and talk to people, and especially if you have like a loved one or something, and there's distance, you can connect. Like my wife gets on and chats with her parents, and I was just thinking back, like you just said, I was thinking back to like the '90s and stuff, and my wife and I lived not really far apart, but a couple of hours for a good year. And it's like we didn't have video calls. It's like
No.
you talk on a phone and that's all you got, right? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
maybe they
yeah.
might mail you a picture and you could see like, oh, this is where I was the other
Yeah,
day.
yeah.
But it's just a fascinating level of connection that we can create now over distance where we couldn't before. It's
Yeah, and
just fascinating to me how much the world has changed.
yeah, and I think that one of the themes that seems to come through in the film is that he lives in the modern era, and then he has all of those connections. He is able to contact people at great distances, and he can travel in airplanes. But there's like a longing in him for something simpler. So he has all of that stuff, but that somehow isn't satiating him. He isn't satisfied by
Yeah.
it all. And the
Yeah.
thing he wants is that real connection to the thing he loves, which is literature. And he finds that by going into that other era. But yeah, so yeah, I think there was definitely themes from our youth and growing up, understanding that the world was very different there. But yeah, no, I mean the film is obviously breathtakingly beautiful as well. So even when there's nothing going on, and the way that the shots are framed, and the way that the pacing of the film, obviously the score as well, it all harks back to that kind of that we'd call it the golden era kind of because he goes back to the 1920s, isn't it, first,
Yeah.
and then later on in the movie, then he goes a little bit further back again. But yeah, I think it just definitely struck home because we have these conversations, we have these ideas, and then the way that the film ends is that he, to my eyes, he sort of realizes that it's not. I don't think it's so much that it's not the era; it's the connections. He's longing for the connection with somebody that he can relate to, and somebody can talk to about the things he loves. And then the way the film wraps up at the end, then and it's just a chance conversation with a young girl, and it's a slow burner, but it was beautiful. It's a beautiful film.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I can relate to is that, I mean, not, 100%, but I find it interesting that his fiance and her parents are like miserable and horrible the whole time. Like every time it's complaining. Oh, I don't like this. I don't like that. I hate the French. I don't trust the doctors. I don't, it's just nonstop
Yeah,
complaints. And, he is longing for, I love the working in of her, the character, the muse, right? I mean, unfortunately, I didn't like the casting choice for her. For some reason, I just don't like her.
I keep
But
thinking of Batman. Every time I see her, I think of Batman.
exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. I don't like her. I don't think I mean, my daughter thinks she's gorgeous, but to me, I just don't think she is. I think she's just, so for me, for her to be the muse, I was just like, oh, damn it. But, it's, you know, I think Woody Allen kind of put in like the muse doesn't have to be just a woman. It is, right? And all of them are latching onto it, whether it's Ernest Hemingway or whether it's Picasso, and it's even,
yeah,
Gil Pender at some point. He grabs onto her as that's his muse, right? But he's more of a musing to the time and the frame and being like, I want to be there. But what is that muse but an outlet, a hope, an outlook to get him away from the horrible situation that he's in? he's got everything in the world he needs. He's a writer doing what he loves. He makes, clearly when they talk about the prices of stuff and
Yeah,
the
yeah,
money he
yeah.
makes back in Hollywood, he's loaded, right? He's got no worries and he's just miserable. But he doesn't really know it until he kind of steps back, and then he realizes, well, I'm not really miserable. I've just surrounded myself in people and things that don't relate to me, right? And and he notices that with the muse is that she's like, I want to go back to the Belle Epoque, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, what about the 20s? The 20s is perfect. Oh, the 20s, they suck. Just like, we're all sitting there going like, are you out of your mind? You have all these freaking amazing people, these literary and artistic geniuses surrounding you. And you think it's a dull and boring era, and to me, it just like resonates. Cause yeah, I mean, I feel like I would love to go back to the 50s. Right. And, the Frank Sinatra times and, hang out in the jazz clubs of old. I would love to bring those back. I think that is such a sad thing that we've lost out of our culture, is that you can't go to those big band clubs anymore. And so, it resonated with me, that longing for an easier, simpler time that you could inspire you to greatness, right? And these are all people that he really looks up to, and I think when he goes back, he kind of realizes like they're just people, right? And
Yeah.
and I think that was eye-opening for him, because I think it allowed him to realize he could be greater than he thought he could have been before, right?
Yeah,
And
I mean, the
I
fact
think
that they went back again, that's where it seemed to really punctuate. Then it was like when he went back to the 20s, he was in that rose tinted world, but when they went back
right.
again, then he sort of had the introspective idea of, hang on, now I'm
Exactly.
sort of getting it, like, yeah, and it's
And he's
interesting
sitting,
to,
and it's just so perfect. He's sitting at a table with Gauguin, Degas, and
yeah,
Lautrec, and he's just like, this
it's
isn't the
wild.
20s.
Yeah. What was interesting about the Muse character mentioned just then was, I like the way that she sort of realizes she's that person. There doesn't seem to be any pretense that she's more than that. She's happy to be that. And that was really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, that was fascinating, right? Yeah, I mean the character was perfect for what it was. Like I said, Cotillard was just not Cotillard was not really my kind of character for that role. But that's not who I would have picked. I would have picked somebody with a lot more, beauty. But I don't know. I don't like her. I don't find her attractive. So
One character that I found didn't sort of, and it's not a criticism, but one character that didn't feel like it had much of an arc was she had a purpose, but it felt like maybe I thought something else was going to come of it. Was the tour guide lady?
yeah, yeah.
She's in it and she drives the story forward in as much as she shines a light on things. But I had an inkling that she might be the love interest, and then
Right.
it swaps to the younger girl. Then, so I thought that was really interesting. My wife said that that actress was married to the president of France. Am I right? Did you not know this either?
Uh, Not Macron.
No, I think the last guy.
Oh, the previous. Oh, like what was his name?
Um,
She might have been. I don't know, but I never understood that as well, because she is kind of like that translational guide for him, and kind of yeah. It is a character that probably could. Honestly, I wish Cotillard and her would have switched roles. I would
yeah,
have thought that girl would have been much better as the muse.
yeah.
But
Here's a question for you, okay? So one I came up with. So I wrote it down. So the film never explains how the time travel works. Do you think that's one of its greatest strengths, or would an explanation have made the story more satisfying?
so honestly, I would have appreciated if they were more vague on whether or not he truly time traveled, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that's what I thought that there should have been some more vagueness because, aside like when the private inspector goes back and gets caught in the past,
Yeah.
as the comedy element in that, I was like, well, that kind of shows the point that he did time travel.
That's what I was going to
So,
say. Yeah, it was only the insertion of that confirms that he was going into the past, that it wasn't just in his mind. Like,
right,
without the insertion of the inspector scene, that the whole time traveling could have been him sitting in a hotel room, daydreaming that. So, yeah,
right,
that's an interesting point. That scene, because it happens to somebody else, makes it real within the story. And that was really interesting
right.
what he did there.
Yeah, yeah. It was it was pretty. I mean, they included it for the comedy element of it because Woody Allen at heart tries to be a comedian, right? And I'm not a Woody Allen fan, but I still just love this movie. But yeah, the going back, I don't think it's necessary to the story. I like the magic of Paris that it kind of brings, that it's just sort of a magical place, and I just love the comedy associated with it. Oh, I got to write a letter to the Chamber of Commerce. This is just
Yeah.
great, you know.
But the
But
irony of it, as well, is that if you take the time that Gil is living in, the real time the film is set in, that is also not how Paris looks. Paris doesn't look anything like that. Paris doesn't feel like that.
right,
There are areas of Paris, if you take them in isolation, that look like that with the lights and the Seine River and, Parisians on bikes. But that's not what Paris looks like. So even his own time was like a vignette of a city that doesn't exist anymore, that exists in his head.
right,
And that was really interesting. So yeah.
yeah. Yeah. I also love like just the opening of it. I mean, just like you said, I mean, showing those images and just there's just so many historical spots to show within the city that just really kind of show that it's just a magical place, right? And um it's just the focus on the various bridges and everything and being able to connect with that personally, I think was important for people who actually had been to Paris and can say like been to every one of those locations. Almost every
Yeah.
place is shot somewhere famous, which is interesting.
Yeah. And I got another question. So, question two: if you were introducing someone to Midnight in Paris for the first time, which single scene would you show them to convince them to watch the whole film, and why?
Well, I'm just not so sure that there's a lot of movies that kind of highlight Hemingway as a person. So I think I would show one of the Hemingway scenes, probably the first scene when he kind of meets Hemingway in the bar and his
In the bar.
astoundedness of it. But really, just his first trip back to Paris. The first time he takes that leap, the 20s Paris. I think that would determine whether somebody would find that film fascinating or not. Because me, I'm fascinated by those characters, the fact that they were all there in 20s Paris was the place to be if you look
Yeah.
at over the last century, right? I mean, just so many literary people that were there. I mean, it's funny he mentioned James Joyce in discussion early on, right? Gil's telling them in the present day, oh, I met so and so who saw James Joyce, who was, and he made a point to say like, and he was more German than he was Irish because he was eating like, German
Yeah.
food because, and obviously that's Woody being like, I'm not putting Joyce in this movie because he was a Nazi. So, but regardless, like, I think people would latch onto that movie if they like not just literary history, but also the characters of these people. Like Hemingway was a very interesting person, a very, just, you know, profound person in society, much like Mark Twain. Most people today think of Mark Twain as just, hey, he wrote Huck Finn and Tom Sawyer and all these other books, but it was
Yeah.
his persona that resonated at the time, right? And we really lack people like that today. Anytime that there was an event in history where something, people died or there was a tragedy or there was a presidential, anytime that there was some event, they would reach out to Mark Twain and ask for a statement. because he would be able to answer and phrase it, you know, the way that they're looking to, like, can you like summarize how everybody's feeling in one go? And he would just put this, you know, touch to it. And I think we lack today a lot of those. I mean, we don't, nobody turns to Justin Bieber to ask him how the Iran war is going, right? I mean, it's just, what we need that. And I think that's kind of, at the time, they had it in spades in 20s Paris. And today we really lack that literary creativity or the real persona of people that kind of take us to another level and to say, like, there's somebody who's really got their shit together, right?
Yeah. I was having conversations with people before, and friends of mine, where they talk about, you look at things like funding for art and things like government funding for art, or private funding for art. And for a lot of people, and you can understand why, they don't really understand the importance of something like painting as an art, or composition, you know, music as an art. And one thing I try to get them to understand is that, like, a painting, a painting like a Picasso, it is not, it's not its paint on canvas that is important. It's the way it makes you think about the world, and the way it informs your understanding and your knowledge. And, you know, like, you take somebody like Nikola Tesla, you know, he enjoyed the music of Beethoven. Now, Beethoven has no connection to electricity. You know, those two things are not connected. But the way that the human brain works is that we need these things. We need these muses. We need these Hemingways and the way that they view the world through their lens. We need Beethovens to make something out of this stuff that we see. And those things go on to inspire scientists and doctors and mathematicians. I like the way that everything is one thing. You know, it's not art and science are separate, or religion and philosophy. These things can work hand in hand, and they do work hand in hand. You know, like George Orwell's books come a lot from his experiences in the Spanish Civil War, the things that he witnessed and experienced. Now, you know, for an author, you would not necessarily come to the immediate conclusion that this man's experience of war would help him, you know, write a book like Animal Farm. But these things plant seeds, and you can see it with the group of people in Midnight in Paris, where you've got Picasso talking about his painting with the muse, you know, and the authors are there and they're listening, and you can see sparks. They're like, that's an idea. I can run with that. I can take that. And like you say, it was just a lovely melting pot of everything. And then to insert Gil into it, then, you know, when you talk about that scene with Hemingway, the first scene with him, Gillis says something, and then Hemingway starts speaking, and he gives this monologue, and the camera goes back to Gil, and his eyes are like, you know, like, this is coming out of his mouth. This isn't just him on paper. This is the man speaking, you know, and it's just beautiful, and it's just.
Oh, it's wonderful. And the guy who portrayed him, I mean, I think he just did a marvelous job, right? Really captivating you. And that's, you know, getting a personality like that captivates you, number one. And next, to be able to cast somebody in a role who can play that part and be able to captivate you in those few just fleeting moments, right? To just, like, you're tuned in to what he's saying. And, you know, it's fascinating. And going back to, you know, all the art and everything, I think that's why in the present day, he hates Paul so much. And Paul, the pedantic one in the present, right? It's just because he's just answering everything that you needed to know, right? In one single straight factual phrase. And it's not, it's not interesting. It's not creative. It's just like, oh yeah, this is why he painted it like that. And it's like, no, like there's lots of there's lots of, like you said, everybody has a different interpretation. It makes you feel different about it. Seeing it gives you that spark of like, oh wow, that's something I never really kind of thought of that. So,
Yeah. I like the
but
idea
it's
of, I remember an art teacher of mine years ago said, I studied history of art, my first degree. I had a module of history of art, and the art teacher said to me something that's always stuck with me. He said, the art is yours while you paint it, but when you make the last brushstroke, it's everybody else's. So for you, it's the thing you create at the time, but then once you sign your name or you finish, it's everyone else's to decide what that is. And I love that, you know, like me and you can look at a Picasso and have very different ideas about what that thing is doing. And I think that comes across nicely in the film with all of those artists around that lovely little scene. And then the way that it goes back to when he goes back to our time then, and they're looking at that same picture, and Gil is able to say, oh, you know, hang on, that was X, Y, and Z. And it was just beautifully done, wasn't it?
yeah, yeah. And I thought the you know the castings for the most part were spot on. The Hemingways were perfect. Zelda and Scott were just awesome. That's Tom Hiddleston and I don't know who plays Zelda off the top of my head, but the way that she portrayed bringing in the Spanish bullfighter. See, all that's true. All that's true to the story, right? She ran off and had an affair with a Spanish bullfighter, and he, as far as we know, never cheated on her, never. And followed her to she was put into a mental asylum later in life, and he followed her there and loved her till the day she died, and so that's why that whole scene where she's about ready to kill herself because she was bipolar, they believe, and trying to kill herself, and he jumps in. I just thought it was perfect. I was like, just how they portrayed them, he didn't try to really go too far off the script. Now there were some things that he really couldn't do, simply because of the time. Because at that point, I think by the time the mid-20s rolled around, not even the mid-20s, 22, 23, Hemingway and Stein had a major falling out. They were no longer talking at that point. So, and that was never brought in, obviously, because you just couldn't have the same story flow, right? Yeah. But it was, just to me, like how they portrayed them, how they portrayed Picasso. It's just, I think it was just excellent, excellent casting all the way around. Even like Owen Wilson. I know a lot of people who just can't stand him on screen, but they love him in that movie, right? Because he's just perfect. That was the role was like written for him.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I didn't even know, so I knew so little about the film that I didn't know Owen Wilson was in it. And as soon as he came on screen in the first scene, you're thinking of Owen Wilson-y kind of things. Then with the voice.
You're going, oh no, not this guy, this guy. This is gonna crash and burn.
Yeah, the way he talked, like gosh, that kind of
wow,
the drawl. Yeah, But then the strength of the writing and the strength of the character, the beauty of each scene, it kind of dissolves then, doesn't it? You don't think of him as Owen Wilson then so much, and you think of him as Gil, and he really embodies that character really well. But no, it was an excellent recommendation, and we both really enjoyed it. We sat outside. Actually, it was a lovely evening. We watched it on the laptop, and it was great. So
I was going to ask you if you had a time that you wanted to go back to.
I always have the same answer to this. I think I should have been a blacksmith in medieval Europe. So I'm thinking like around the Crusade kind of era, a little village, making armor, shoeing horses. And then I always think the exact same. That's what I always go to, is becoming unwell in that era is not great, is it? It's like for all of it. When you think of past eras, you don't think about lying in bed dying of cholera, do you? You think of being outside in the field, drinking from a well and all that great stuff. So I like. I think a more modern era for me would be 19, 1930s, 1940s Great Britain. Although there was a war going on, I think I like the idea of that Dunkirk spirit, the idea that people banded together, they got on with things. My grandmother, she worked in a weapons factory. She made ammunition, but all of the stories that you would hear from her were never about how hard everything it was. It was about how her family would always be around the house and her friends who lived on the street. And if a house got bombed by the Germans, all the men would go out and collect the bricks up and put them all to the side. And I like that. I like that idea of community and a sense of civic duty. I like the way that people dressed, like no man would be outside without a hat on, and men would wear suits and a collar. So yeah, for me, I think probably I'd like the idea of being a blacksmith back in the olden days, but yeah, 1940s Britain. We still had a bit of empire going on. Yeah, that would be for me. What about yourself? Where do you think?
Yeah, 40s and 50s for me would be, it would have to be after wartime, I think. But that, to me, like looking back to even like the old sitcoms, like Leave It to Beaver, stuff like that, when the world, the world was kind of your oyster, right? I mean, there weren't so many people that you could still do just about anything you wanted. There was opportunity everywhere, and people weren't so cutthroat and gung ho, and I think that would have been to me the ideal time to just go back to where, to getting in the car and driving wasn't something that you dreaded to do, that it was like, oh man,
Yeah.
3 hours on the interstate, like taking a nice slow drive. The fact that people would take vacations for, a month and just be like, oh yeah, I remember that time we drove out to California for a month, it's like, can't do that today, right? Not without getting losing your job. And, we were talking about that, in my family the other night. I was looking into New Zealand again for some reason, and I was like, man, to get down there, like, I mean, that's not a 2 week trip. Like that's a
Yeah.
long haul to get down there. Once you're down there, you want to see everything, and it's not a small place, right? It's like, so how are you even supposed to do that in today's world, right? I mean, basically the best you can do is hop on a flight and then spend a couple of weeks around Auckland and maybe get down to Wellington if you're lucky, and maybe hit the South Island on some sort of tour or something. But you're not going to be going to everything that you liked and want to see, which is, what I like to do is I like to get off the beaten path, right? I like to go to places that aren't touristic, that it's like they have history because they're famous amongst the locals, right? The locals know the places, but the tourists don't. I love that. And so going back to the 50s, just we didn't have Google Maps, where you didn't have a phone, where you had to just go to these places and you'd meet people and say, oh, I went to Paris, and here are a couple black and white photos I took, two of them,
Yeah.
one of the Eiffel Tower. But you're just going to have to trust me that the cafes and the streets are amazing. And, and it's like, oh, and then people wanted to go and people wanted to do that. And they got on a boat, they went, or a plane and went over there and traveled. And to me, it was like that. It was like being an explorer again. And today's
Yeah.
world, my wife always loves that scene in the Truman Show where, he wants to be an explorer, and then she pulls down the map of the world and says like, well, it looks like we've already seen everywhere, so sorry, you're gonna have to pick another one.
Yeah. I think from what you're saying there, it's like we live, it's easy to I mean, the whole of Midnight in Paris is this, but it's easy to look back at past decades and think, it was better then, and in some ways lots of things were. And I think one of the issues that I think we have today is that we've got too much choice. If you've got a decent job and you can afford to travel, your options are pretty much unlimited. You know, you could go to pyramids of Machu Picchu, or you could go and visit, you know, the Great Pyramids of Giza, or you could go to Svalbard and go up to the North Pole. And it's overwhelming and tiring just thinking of these things. But for people that lived a long time ago, you know, not a generation ago, it was much simpler. You couldn't do those things, so you did things that were more local. You know, you did things that were within your own country. I mean, a great example is I live here in Wales. I've been almost nowhere in my own country. I've been to a few
Yeah,
towns and seen a few things, but I don't
yeah,
know. I probably know the geography of Croatia or northern Italy better than I know my own. And you know, so there's a lot to be said for having less choice. You know, it seems like a bad thing, but yeah, you know, something as simple as it's Saturday night and you don't fancy cooking and you say to your wife, you know, what do you fancy? We'll get a takeout. That conversation is an hour long, deciding, you know, oh,
yeah.
we had tacos last week, and you know, they had far less choice, and there's a simplicity and a beauty in that, I think, you know. So yeah,
Yeah. Well, I agree 100% on the doing stuff locally. I mean, it's amazing the places that are around me and where we've lived that I'm just like that I haven't gone to. I mean, I made an effort in when I lived in New England to go to a lot of the early revolutionary sites, and but here, like we've lived here 5 years yet now, and I have yet. I mean, we're right next to Valley Forge, which is where Washington camped over the winter of like 82 to 83, something like that. You know, and they had their camp. They still have it very well preserved. I haven't been there, and I'm like dying to go there. But there's lots
yeah,
of
yeah,
places around Lancaster as well. You find out people are like, oh, this place was amazing, and you're like, I didn't even know it existed, right? And
yeah,
yet here we go, hop on a plane, and we fly around the world to go to a museum that has absolutely no connection with where we're living
yeah,
or what we're doing. And so, yeah, I'm 100% with you on that topic. That it's just we there are just way too many options to go and do things that they didn't have in the past. But there's still a lot that's not right. There's still a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
stuff that's hard to get to, right? I mean,
Yes,
me, I would love to go to Nepal. I don't know that if I ever will, but just how challenging it is to get there. You know, it
yeah,
is a couple more flights, but even just to get off the beaten path there, it's you're traveling around areas where it's probably not easy to that I'm assuming to get around. The same thing in central Brazil and the Amazon rainforest. Like
yeah,
you can get there, it's gonna, but to get off the beaten path and to see something that you truly were probably looking for to begin with,
yeah,
that doesn't say that sell you magnets and postcards there in the gift shop is a little more difficult. And so it's yeah, it's crazy to think. I mean, the places that I've lived have been very historical in the history of the United States, and I feel like I haven't really touched a lot of that. But then when I go to Wales, it's like, man, I want to go into every single one of these old churches and ruins, and you probably drive by them every day and be like, not a
yeah.
big deal.
Yeah, it's funny enough. I remember I read a book. I think it might have been, I could be wrong, but it was, I think it was Sapiens. I can't remember the author now, but it was talking about like early humanity and things. And one thing that really struck me when I was reading it, and it could be a different book, but they were saying like human beings are have a tendency to want to explore. And he said in the book that if you take a village somewhere 2,000 years ago in the UK, say, you could imagine that somebody would look at a hill in the distance and think, I wonder what's on the other side of that, you know?
Yep.
And then they would go there and they would see what's on the other side and they'd meet another group of people and they'd start talking. And then they'd see a valley and a lake and they'd be like, I wonder if anybody lives the other side of that lake. And I
Yep.
think that stays with us. That idea that we want to see with our own eyes what is over the hill, what is across the water. There's that longing to explore. And I think with Midnight in Paris, that idea moves through time. You know, he's like, you can see when he's in those times, he's soaking it in. He's overwhelmed, and he's trying to get as much as he can from these people. He's like, this is a new, he's in a new place, in a new time. And yeah, it was just those ideas of exploration and a journey and wanting to experience things. Yeah, it's just, yeah, it was beautiful. Yeah, beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, and that's me. I mean, I feel the same way as him. I mean, I would just be as awestruck as him, and I love that first sequence of him going back because his eyes just kind of get wider and wider as it goes on. And when he's sitting there in the bar with Josephine Baker dancing along, right? And he's sitting there like, oh my God, that is Josephine Baker dancing in front of me. I've got the Fitzgeralds around me, right? And he's sitting there and he's just like wide-eyed and like, you know, jaw on the floor. And then you could just kind of watch him just kind of like, all right, he just kind of like starts dancing
Yeah.
along with it, right? And the realization comes and he's like, I'm in the middle of it now. And now I've got, like you said, I've got to enjoy it. I've got to play the part. And, you know, I thought he did a fantastic job setting that scene, as well as just, you know, the exact same way that I feel that I go to these places and I'm like, man, one day's not enough. I want to spend a longer period of time here to really understand the people, understand the culture. I mean, to me, I'm fascinated by cultural differences. I mean, how other people get impressions. I read an amazing book when my youngest daughter was born, or my oldest daughter was born. It was called Our Babies Ourselves. It was an anthropologist and talking about how other cultures raise their children. And basically, I mean, the book, the guiding principle behind the whole book is that they're different than you, but they're not wrong, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I try to convince my oldest daughter all the time today when she starts having arguments about things and getting fired up. I'm like, listen, the first thing you have to realize is, yes, you may be right, but they're not wrong. In their mind, they are 100% right. They have a reason behind why they are who they are, why they've chosen the path they've chosen. That was the same way as in the book. Like, she goes to like this tribe in Brazil and tries to lay the baby down and lay down next to her because she went with her newborn, right? And the whole village flips out, and the mothers come up and she like, I thought they were going to slap me. And they sit her up, they push her up against the wall, and they make her sit like cross-legged on against the wall and hold the baby in the lap of her legs. And she goes, about 20 minutes of that, my legs were like numb, completely numb, and I couldn't feel them, right? But that was the only way that they would allow me to sleep with my baby, because they're like, that's just, you can't put a baby down like that. The baby needs human contact, needs to know you're there. You need to be sleeping. And it's like, you know, we would look at that as Americans and be like, you're out of your mind if you think I'm sleeping the night cross-legged up against the wall. Right? It's like, that ain't never happening. Right? And it's like, yeah, you might be right, but they're not wrong. Right? Because she's like, their babies grow up normal. They grow up fine. And, you know, and they have the same sense of family. So, you know, all these preconceptions we have about what you have to do with your child are not, you know, are not true. They're not, you know, yes, you have those and maybe you're right, but they're not wrong. There's other ways to go about it to get that same sense of principle and purpose in life and being able to raise a child properly, right? And I think that was critical, you know, if we go back to Midnight in Paris, right? The time that he goes back to was a critical time. It was the end of World War I. It was prohibition in the United States. So a lot of them were there, you know, with the added benefit.
I forgot about that. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
Yeah, that the alcohol's free flowing in Paris, right? Now, that wasn't the reason they were there, but then you realize, like, of the literary greats and the artistic greats, that was the movement of the world at that time. And so, like, why wouldn't you be there, right? I mean, that was really what kind of drew everybody to that city at that time. And, you know, even the small things that they're doing, the small changes that they are, you know, the way that they view the creativity, it's like, you know, his wife and husband just look at it like, why would you want to go back there? That's just awful. Never going to do that. Right. And just because they're such negative people and they're so miserable in their current lives, but they can't view going back there because the first thing, lack of technology, is they're out. Right. I'm out.
Yeah.
And it's like, but you got to look past that because they're not wrong. They didn't have technology, they didn't have the choice, but they're still living great lives. You know, they're still happy. They're still you know, making amazing art that lasted, you know, a century already and will last centuries more. I mean, it was just a fascinating concept to think that such an influential period in such a short space and time existed. And you know, just even with the cultural differences, I mean, it was a melting pot, like you said. You had the Americans there, you had the Irish there, you had everybody coming together into a cultural conglomerate of Paris at the time, yet maintaining, all of them had that same principle going on: the free flowing ideas, the, you know, the freedom, the enjoying of life. I mean, all of them had that same guiding light. And I think he needed to see, like, it wasn't the time or the people, it was their own mentality behind it. And he could find that in modern day Paris as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, it was beautiful. I mean, Gil is there is a line that can be drawn from Fitzgerald and Hemingway all the way to Gil. You know, Gil is a point on that line. And yeah, him coming back and then going back full circle then, you know, he ticks that box. He's like, I've done that now. I've seen it now, and now I realize, now I have that introspective to understand that, you know, for all the amazing things of the past and the simplicity, we have now, and now is great. You know, we have our health and our youth and our family beside us, and, you know, he walks off into the distance, the last shot of the film, and she's standing next to him, and it's like, it comes back
raining.
Around. Yeah.
And it's raining, and it's like, and they both love Paris in the rain, that it brings out more of the art of it, right? And it's like, you know, everything of that in the modern day, everybody else he met, it was like, oh, I hate the rain. It just rains all the time here. It's horrible, right? And he goes, oh, I love it in the rain. And the fact that she did too, it was like, you know, it's that connection of a muse, of somebody who shares, you know, the common hopes and dreams. And he had to go back to 22 to find a bunch of people that did, that said, hey, this is the artistic.
It's like he pulls the piece that he needed from the past into the future. It's like he pulls that out. He thought he needed all of it. He thought he wanted all of it, but he realized he just needed that little flame, you know. And then, I'm here. I'm now. Now is the best time. And I have no doubt he went on to write his book, you know, and it get published, and he left the lucrative film industry behind. But yeah, no. So thank you very much. So we just passed 45 minutes. So shall we leave it there for this one, and we'll carry on with the next?
Absolutely.
So I was thinking, I don't know, but I would guess that Midnight in Paris is probably on the IMDb top 100 list. I'm guessing it's probably there somewhere. So what I was thinking,
if it's not, it's because of the Woody Allen aspect. I mean, it's a Woody Allen, love him or hate him. So, I mean, my mom refuses to watch the movie because it was directed by Woody Allen and written by Woody Allen. So, and I get that. I'm not a huge fan, but to me, I can look at anything. It's art. So, I mean, James Joyce, it's like the guy became a Nazi, for God's sakes, and yet they still praise him. I mean, he was a good writer. You know, I mean, despite what you might think about Hitler, he had some pretty good speeches in there, apparently. So, you know, but the rest of them probably not so much. But
I mean, you pull anybody out of history and you look at the totality of their life, and there's going to be things that you would disagree with. But you know, like Hemingway, you know, he was a man first, but he's an author, and you know, these people, their works is what they should be held up by, you know. So, all right then. So how about we'll get together off camera and we'll come up with maybe another one within the top 100, something like that. How do you fancy that? We'll maybe try and chisel away and make our way through that. So, right. Well, I will stop recording here, and I will catch you online. I will put this together and upload and send you the link.
Sounds good. Awesome.
Great. Enjoy the rest of your... Well, what time is it there now? It's still the morning, isn't it?
Yeah, 12.
12 o'clock. It is 5 o'clock here, and I'm going to church in 45 minutes. So have a great day, and thank you, everybody, for watching.
Yep. Thank you.